Chapter 59. In front of the great Buddha's hall. Everyone was stunned. The dark sect disciples were still okay. Although they were shocked, they only thought that Su Qin was hiding his strength. They all cursed the Shaolin Temple for being insidious and cunning. But many disciples of the Shaolin Temple, including the head abbot, were completely stunned. The dark sect disciples didn't know Su Qin's background, but how could they not know? Su Qin had been in the temple for 20 years and had been a sweeping monk for 20 years. Most of the disciples on the scene often greeted Su Qin. Could such a person be the ancestor of a holy monk of the Shaolin Temple? Abbot Huiwen was stunned. The new head of the Chores Court was stunned. The head of the warrior monastery was stunned. The head of the commandment court was stunned. Zhenguan? A holy monk without a name? The new head of the Chores Court only felt a roar in his head. Before the old head passed away, he had told him to take care of Zhenguan. But now, the new head of the Chores Court suddenly felt that everything in the Shaolin Temple had become strange. He is the ancestor of a holy monk of our temple? Abbot Huiwen suddenly thought of the vague figure who had broken in when he was suffering from qi deviation 6 years ago. At that time, Abbot Huiwen only thought that the vague figure seemed to be very young, not like a person who had lived for more than 100 years. However, although Abbot Huiwen had doubts at that time, he only thought that he was overthinking. Based on the means shown by the ancestor of a holy monk, even if he was not a top first pin, he was not far from it. How could he be so young? Besides, Abbot Huiwen was very sure that the ancestor of a holy monk was not a disciple of the Hui generation. In this case, except for an unknown ancestor, Abbot Huiwen could not think of any other possibility. However, what Abbot Huiwen did not expect was that the ancestor of a holy monk was indeed not a disciple of the Hui generation. Instead, he was a disciple of the true generation. Junior apprentice brother Zhenguan. Zhen Ji stared blankly at Su Qin, his face full of confusion. 10 years ago, Shi Shui sneaked into the demon-subduing pagoda and devoured many demons imprisoned in the pagoda, entering the second stage in one fell swoop. At that time, when many monks patrolling the demon-subduing pagoda were about to die at the hands of Shi Shui, a vague figure appeared and killed Shi Shui. At this moment, the vague figure in Zhenji's mind, at some unknown time, had merged with Su Qin's figure at this moment. A moment later, just as everyone was still in a state of deep shock, the Black Lord's deep laughter began to ring out. So you really are a holy monk. So you really are a holy monk. The Black Lord's eyes emitted a faint black glow. It was so dark and serene that it seemed to come from the abyss. Since you are a holy monk, then today, I will use your blood to prove my mythical path. The Black Lord stomped his foot, and in an instant, endless demonic energy surged wildly and spread in all directions. The Black Lord didn't know how Su Qin could escape his sight. But in any case, the opponent he longed for was right in front of him, so how could he have the patience to ask questions? I cultivated hard in the Western Desert for 50 years, watching natural disasters and comprehending the heavens and earth, and created this technique. I hope a holy monk won't let me down. As soon as the Black Lord's voice fell, the endless demonic energy suddenly changed, constantly colliding and fusing, faintly forming a black sandstorm that had shrunk countless times. Not good. It was very troublesome. Under this black sandstorm, even a grade 1 great grandmaster like Abbot Huiwen trembled all over, and a life and death crisis emerged in his heart. Your Excellency, the Demon Lord's move is probably a full blow. You can enter my Shaolin Temple's Arhat array and temporarily avoid the attack. Abbot Huiwen didn't know how to address Su Qin for a while, so he could only call him Your Excellency. In Abbot Huiwen's view, even if Su Qin was really a holy monk, his strength may not be comparable to the current Demon Lord. Therefore, in the face of the Demon Lord's full blow, it stands to reason that he should retreat. However, Su Qin shook his head and said casually, "No, it's too troublesome." Su Qin had just entered the Arhat realm, but he wanted to try how strong he was now. The Black Lord condensed a black sandstorm with his own demonic energy, but in Su Qin's view, it was just another way to use internal force. It was nothing at all. You dare! When the demon lord saw that Su Qin did not have the slightest intention of dodging, he was furious. The black sandstorm became even darker. The next moment, the sky became dark. The ink-black sandstorm instantly enveloped Su Qin. "Be careful." Abbot Huiwen was anxious. However, he was injured at the moment and could not intervene in the fight between the Black Lord and Su Qin. Many demon sect disciples seemed to see the scene of Su Qin being torn apart by the black sandstorm. Wang! The air within 10 meters of Su Qin was faintly distorted. All the black sandstorms near this area quickly evaporated as if they had never existed. "This is?" The Black Lord's expression changed drastically, and he looked at Su Qin in disbelief. The Black Lord was not the only one. The others' eyes almost popped out of their sockets. If Su Qin had been prepared and blocked the Demon Lord's attack with great difficulty, everyone could still accept it. But what was the truth? Su Qin did not even move. He stood there alone and blocked the Demon Lord's full-powered attack. How was this possible? "This is your strength?" Su Qin still stood in the same place, looking slightly disappointed. If the Demon Lord's attack was a few thousand times stronger, he might have felt threatened. "Who are you?" The Black Lord's expression was unprecedentedly serious. Originally, the Black Lord thought that Su Qin's strength was similar to his, a second transformation peak grade 1, or even weaker than him. But now it seems that the other party is most likely a third transformation peak grade 1 great perfection. Should I fight or retreat? The Black Lord looked hesitant. If Su Qin is really a grade 1 great perfection, if he continues to stay, it is very likely that he will die here. However, without waiting for the Black Lord to make a decision, Su Qin, who was standing there, leisurely took a step forward. "Let's end this." Su Qin stretched out his slender right hand and gently patted the Black Lord. "Humph." The Black Lord's face flashed coldly. "So what if you are a grade 1 great perfection? Defeating me is easy, but if you want to keep me here, you are dreaming." The Black Lord retreated, wanting to get away from Su Qin. However, the next moment, a vast and mighty power swept out from all directions, trapping the black-robed Demon Lord in place. "This is?" The Black Lord's expression changed wildly, looking at Su Qin as if he was looking at a monster. "Might of heaven and earth? You are a legend." Chapter 60. You are not grade 1 great perfection. You are a legend. The Black Lord's hysterical roar of despair spread throughout the Shaolin Temple in an instant. Legend? What is a legend? A disciple of the Shaolin Temple who had just entered asked subconsciously. They had just entered the Shaolin Temple not long ago and did not know much about the 9 grades of martial Dao, let alone the legend. However, when these new disciples of the Shaolin Temple saw the shocked faces of the senior brothers next to them, they suddenly did not dare to speak. Legend? Arhat's fruit. The commandment court had muttered to himself. In today's world, martial Dao is divided into 9 grades. Only those who transcend the 9 grades of martial Dao are qualified to be called Arhat's fruit or legend. In fact, whether it is Arhat's fruit or legend, they all have the same meaning, but the former is the name of the Shaolin Temple and other Buddhist sects, while the latter is the name of Jianghu martial artists. Legend? Zhen Guan. The handyman court head's eyes were dull. Originally, Zhen Guan jumped from a sweeping monk to become the ancestor of a holy monk who saved the Shaolin Temple from life and death several times. This is already hard to believe. But now, someone told him, Zhen Guan is not only the ancestor of a holy monk. He is also the ancestor of the Shaolin Temple who has not appeared for thousands of years. Arhat? Isn't this too incredible? The handyman court head was not jealous, but he was shocked to the extreme and could not react for a while. The Dharma court heads, warrior monastery heads, Arhat court heads, and other Shaolin Temple court heads as well as many disciples were dumbfounded. If this sentence was not said by the Devil Lord, a grade 1 great grandmaster, they would not believe it at all. A martial arts legend? The weight of these 4 words could almost overwhelm the current world, so how could it be casually said? However, with the Devil Lord's status, he should disdain to lie about this matter. Moreover, the Devil Lord's expression and tone at this moment did not seem like he was lying. What? A martial arts legend? Compared to the shock of the Shaolin Temple disciples, the evil cult disciples who came knocking on their door panicked. They were prepared to annihilate the Shaolin Temple aggressively. Originally, they thought that with the Devil Lord holding the fort, victory was in their hands. Even if there was an accident and the Shaolin Temple's history of Arhat's legacy would be drawn out, but with the Devil Master's means, there was no problem in protecting their safety. But now, the Shaolin Temple had Arhat in charge? How could this be possible? Although these demon sect disciples were very confident in the Demon Lord, they didn't think that the Demon Lord could defeat Arhat. These two were not on the same level at all. It's over. It's all over. Countless demon sect disciples were filled with despair. They did think of running away, but as soon as the thought came to them, they felt a faint force from all directions that imprisoned them. It was as if the entire Shaolin Temple had become the domain of a certain existence. He's a martial arts legend? The demon sect disciple, Kun Kong, felt that he had heard the biggest joke in the world. He had narrowly escaped death and crossed the western desert to find the Devil Lord and invited him out. He wanted to revive the demon sect and find a holy monk of the Shaolin Temple to take revenge. And now you're telling me that the other party is a martial arts legend? This is not revenge, this is suicide. Kun Kong suddenly recalled the scene 5 years ago when Su Qin was wearing a gray monk's robe and cleaning up the demon sect's headquarters. At this moment, despair gathered in Kun Kong's heart and turned into a sentence. You're a martial arts legend? Why are you bullying the weak? In front of the Hall of Great Strength, as Su Qin gently waved his hand, his original body turned into a shadow. The Black Lord, who was retreating, was directly imprisoned in place, unable to move. Who are you? The Black Lord looked pale as he looked at Su Qin and asked in a hoarse voice. The so-called pressure of life and death, the so-called breakthrough, and the so-called fight had long been forgotten by the Black Lord. Now, the only thought in the Black Lord's mind was how to save his life. As long as he could live, there was hope. I'm just a sweeping monk of the Shaolin Temple. Su Qin thought for a moment and said. He didn't say this sentence out loud. In the 20 years since he joined the Shaolin Temple, Su Qin had never given up sweeping. This was obvious to all in the Shaolin Temple. A sweeping monk? The Black Lord was stunned, his face full of disbelief. A sweeping monk of the Shaolin Temple? What kind of joke was this? A martial arts legend? How could he be a sweeping monk of the Shaolin Temple? Even a 3-year-old child would scoff at such words. It was like an emperor sitting on the wealth of the world saying that he had no money. All right. You can die now. Su Qin suddenly lost interest. Originally, he wanted to borrow the hand of this demon lord to test how strong he was. He didn't expect the other party to be so weak. Ah! The Black Lord suddenly felt the pressure on him skyrocketing, almost crushing him. He immediately knew that Su Qin had no intention of letting him go. Break? Even though the Black Lord knew that his chances of survival were slim, he couldn't help but struggle with all his might. In the blink of an eye, the Black Lord burned his transformed inner strength and physical body in the form of a forbidden art. Suddenly, a terrifying aura emerged from the Black Lord's body. This aura even surpassed the ordinary grade 1 great perfection. His strength suddenly increased, but the Black Lord didn't show the slightest joy on his face. This forbidden art had completely burned his inner strength and physical body. Even if he survives, his strength is bound to plummet, and even fall out of grade 1. But now, the Black Lord didn't care. However, the next moment, the terrifying might of heaven and earth crushed down. Almost instantly, the bones of the Demon Lord shattered. I didn't expect that after killing countless people in my life, I would finally die in the hands of others. The Black Lord muttered to himself. His physical body had completely collapsed, leaving only the remnants of his divinity. However, the Black Lord's divinity was far inferior to the Devil Buddha. He didn't even condense his divine sense. Once he lost the protection of his physical body, Su Qin didn't need to do anything, he would quickly dissipate into the air. Sure enough, in less than a moment, The Black Lord shook violently, his physical body completely collapsed and dissipated. The audience was dead silent. Everyone was silent. If it was said that when the black-robed demon lord roared out the words martial arts legend, people still had doubts. But at this moment, when they saw the Black Lord, a peak grade 1, couldn't even resist and directly turned into ashes, they no longer had any doubts in their hearts. Just when the disciples of the Shaolin Temple and the people of the demon sect were immersed in the shocking scene in front of them, Abbot Huiwen's tears flowed down his face. Ignoring his injuries, he trembled and said, "It's been 900 years. 900 years, my Shaolin Temple has finally produced another Arhat." Chapter 61. As the Black Lord was completely annihilated, many demon sect disciples' faces were as pale as paper, without a trace of blood. During this period of time, the Devil Lord had walked out of the Western Desert and re-entered the world. These demon sect disciples had been glorious. They had consecutively destroyed several righteous sects such as the Tiantai sect and awed the martial arts world in the Tang dynasty. But now, these demon sect disciples realized that everything was gone. Not to mention the impact of the Devil Lord's death on the demon sect, whether they could walk out of the Shaolin Temple alive was a problem. After Su Qin killed the Black Lord with a flip of his palm, he seemed to have discovered something. He turned his eyes and looked at the place where the Devil Lord had fallen again. He saw a tattered animal skin roll there. It should be known that Su Qin had just controlled the power of heaven and earth within a radius of several miles to kill the Devil Lord. Under this vast and mighty power of heaven and earth, even the Demon Lord's body, which had undergone a metamorphosis, collapsed in an instant and vanished into thin air. It was not only the Devil Lord's body, but also the other objects on his body. However, what Su Qin did not expect was that this tattered animal skin did not disappear along with the Demon Lord, but instead, it existed. An animal skin that can withstand the power of heaven and earth? Su Qin was interested. He instantly opened the eyes of truth and repeatedly confirmed that the animal skin was not a threat. Then, he waved his right hand and took the animal skin in his hand. After entering the realm of Arhat, Su Qin's divine mind had been greatly improved and could completely interfere with reality. Whoosh! As soon as the tattered animal skin fell on Su Qin's hand, he felt a cold feeling as if he was holding a piece of ice. This animal skin is not ordinary. Su Qin looked slightly dignified. At this moment, he realized that the reason why the animal skin was tattered was entirely because it had always been like this, not because it had been crushed by heaven and earth just now. "I'll look at the animal skin when I get back. Let's deal with these demon sect disciples first." Su Qin raised his head slightly and looked at the terrified evil cult disciples. At this moment, as Su Qin looked over, the demon sect disciples lowered their heads one after another. No one dared to look directly at him. "Since you have the guts to come knocking on my door, then stay here forever." Su Qin naturally wouldn't be soft-hearted. Before he became Arhat, it would take him some effort to kill this group of demon sect disciples. Moreover, these demon sect disciples weren't made of wood. They would scatter and run away. Even if Su Qin had the eye of truth to lock onto their auras, it would still take time to kill them one by one. But now, Su Qin had already entered the realm of Arhat, and he could easily control the heaven and earth power within a radius of several kilometers. As long as this group of evil cult disciples were within his range, their lives would be in his hands. "Don't. A holy monk. No, Arhat, please spare our lives. We know we were wrong. Please, Arhat, let us go this time. I'm willing to be locked up in the demon suppression tower." Countless evil cult disciples pleaded bitterly. However, the next moment, the mighty power of the heavens and earth swept across. The light in the eyes of these evil cult disciples quickly dimmed, and they fell to the ground with a plop. After dealing with these evil cult disciples, Su Qin glanced at the many disciples of the Shaolin Temple in the distance, who were still in shock. Then he took a step forward and disappeared on the spot. The danger of the demon sect, which was able to destroy the Shaolin Temple, ended in such an almost dreamlike way. The Devil Lord of 50 years ago reappeared in the world and wanted to use the blood of a holy monk of the Shaolin Temple as a stepping stone, but in the end, he led all the elites of the demon sect to destruction. The court heads felt as if they were in a dream. They were just ready to live and die with the Shaolin Temple, but they didn't expect such a reversal. Abbot, what exactly is going on? The commandment court head subconsciously looked at Abbot Huiwen and asked tentatively. As soon as he said that, the other court heads and the disciples of the annex were shocked and looked at Abbot Huiwen in unison, waiting for some kind of explanation. At this moment, although the crisis of the Shaolin Temple had been resolved, a bigger doubt appeared in the hearts of all the disciples. What was going on with Arhat, who killed the Black Lord with a raise of his hand? I don't know about this. Huiwen was silent for a while and said truthfully. If he had known that Arhat was in charge of the Shaolin Temple, how could he have risked his life to fight the Devil Lord? As soon as Abbot Huiwen's voice fell, the other court heads and disciples were suddenly speechless. If even Abbot Huiwen didn't know what was going on, they were even more clueless. At this moment, the warrior monastery head suddenly thought of something and looked at the new court head of the handyman court with a happy expression. Junior brother, you are the court head of the handyman court and have been in the handyman court for so long. You must know the identity of that existence, right? The warrior monastery head looked at the new court head of the handyman court expectantly. The other court heads nodded secretly. That existence had been in the handyman court for 20 years. After such a long time, the new court head of the handyman court could more or less detect something. The new court head of the handyman court, you don't know, how can I know? I don't know either. The new court head of the handyman court braced himself and said. At the same time, in the handyman court, Su Qin left the Great Strength Hall and came to the handyman court. My identity was exposed after all. Su Qin sat cross-legged and looked slightly emotional. In fact, when Su Qin broke through and entered the realm of Arhat, he didn't care whether his identity was exposed or not. Before becoming invincible, of course, he would lie low. But if he was invincible, what was the point of lying low? At least according to what Su Qin knew, there hadn't been a martial artist at the level of Arhat in the past 100 years. In other words, with Su Qin's current strength, he didn't need to care about any existence in the mortal world. To deal with Arhat, only an existence at the same level could do it. However, what is that piece of animal skin on the demon lord's body? Su Qin's mind moved, and a piece of tattered animal skin appeared in front of him. The animal skin was tattered and looked a little old, but it faintly emitted a cold feeling. This animal skin belongs to the Devil Lord. Maybe it involves some kind of secret? Su Qin carefully looked at the animal skin and found that there were inexplicable lines on it, as if it was recording some kind of information. Record? Su Qin's heart moved slightly. According to common sense, animal hides were mostly used to record information. Maybe this animal skin stores some kind of information? Su Qin's thoughts spread as he thought quickly. Being able to resist the power of heaven and earth, this animal skin is probably an item at the level of Arhat? And the information stored on it may not be seen with the naked eye. As soon as Su Qin thought of this, he released his divine sense and shrouded the tattered animal skin. Boom! Just as Su Qin's divine thought touched the animal skin, he heard a roar. Chapter 62. V-Room. The tattered animal skin gradually emitted a faint glow. As Su Qin continued to pour his divine sense into it, the glow on the surface of the animal skin grew dimmer and dimmer. Finally, with a crack, the entire animal skin crumbled and dissipated into the air. At this moment, Su Qin slowly opened his eyes. I see. Su Qin murmured in a low voice. Su Qin's guess was right. There was indeed some information stored in this animal skin, and this information could not be seen by ordinary people. Only a peerless first rank who had condensed divine sense, or even a martial arts legend, could read the information inside. No wonder there are no martial artists at the level of Arhat in the world today. It has something to do with the longevity aura from 800 years ago. Su Qin's mind was in turmoil. According to the information stored In the animal skin, 800 years ago, the world changed greatly. Several martial arts legends of that era all felt a wisp of longevity aura cutting through the sky and disappearing into the depths of the sea. This wisp of longevity aura drove several martial arts legends of that era crazy. After all, even if one entered the martial arts legend realm, one would only have a Shoyuan of 500 years. 500 years of Shoyuan seemed very long, but in reality, for any martial arts legend, a little seclusion would take years, and decades would pass. But 800 years ago, that wisp of longevity aura that cut through the sky could greatly extend the lifespan of any martial arts legend of Shoyuan. Ever since they felt that wisp of longevity aura, the few remaining martial arts legends of this continent crossed the sea and chased after it. They also left an order that in the future, any newly born martial arts legends did not need to stay on this continent for too long. They could just follow in their footsteps. Of course, this order was only passed down among the forces that had once produced martial arts legends. Although the Shaolin Temple had produced Arhat before, the most recent Arhat was Tu-Arahan from 900 years ago. Tu-Arahan had passed away early because he suppressed the Devil Buddha. He did not experience the Great Change 800 years ago. Therefore, the Shaolin Temple did not keep this secret. I was careless. Su Qin's expression turned solemn. Originally, he thought that there were no existences at the level of Arhat in the world, so he did not mind revealing his identity. But now, it seemed that there might not be such existences on this continent, but outside the continent, in the endless deep sea, there might still be martial artists at the level of martial arts legend. For martial arts legends, they had long reached the level of immortality as chi-eaters, and there was no need for them to replenish their energy through external consumption. Other than that, martial arts legends could even ride the wind and control the chi. Crossing the ocean was as simple as drinking water and eating. Longevity aura? Su Qin frowned. Although the beast's skin recorded the reason for the Great Change 800 years ago, it was a taboo when it came to the longevity aura. Thus, it only mentioned a few words before not continuing. However, even if there are other martial arts legends, what can they do? Su Qin let out a sigh of relief. At the very least, those martial arts legends were far away overseas and posed no threat to Su Qin. You fellows, go pursue the longevity aura. Su Qin shook his head slightly. Other martial arts legends might be very eager to extend their Shoyuan with the longevity aura. But Su Qin was different. Ever since he stepped into the realm of Arhat, Su Qin faintly sensed that his Shoyuan had skyrocketed from 400 years to 800 years. After all, Su Qin was only 30 years old now. Even if he did nothing in the future, his strength would not improve, and he could not sign in any rewards that could extend his Shoyuan. He could still live for 770 years without any disasters. Why is my Shoyuan 300 years longer than ordinary martial arts legends? Su Qin had some doubts in his heart. Normally, whether it was Arhat or a martial arts legend, the Shoyuan had 500 years. But Su Qin had 800 years of Shoyuan. Is it because I forged my body with the power of extreme yin and the power of extreme yang? Su Qin suddenly thought. After these continuous sign-ins, Su Qin also roughly understood that if a grade 1 great grandmaster wants to transform their body, they do not follow the method of yin and yang coexistence. Instead, it depends on their physique. For example, a grade 1 great grandmaster whose physique is inclined to yang relies on the path of boundless sun to transform their body. A grade 1 great grandmaster whose physique is inclined to yin uses the path of boundless extreme yin to transform their body. Like Su Qin, yin and yang coexistence has never appeared before. Is it because of the eyes of truth? Su Qin's eyes narrowed slightly. It was the eyes of truth that prompted him to find a yin attribute body refining cultivation technique and combine it with the invincible Vajra divine art to temper his body. Just as Su Qin was thinking, his heart suddenly moved, and he looked up in a certain direction. They've found their way here. With Su Qin's current perception, even if he does not use divine sense, he knows every movement in the vicinity like the back of his hand. At this moment, Su Qin noticed that Abbot Huiwen and the other court heads were rushing towards the handyman court. Su Qin was not surprised by this scene. When he returned to the handyman court, he did not deliberately hide his figure, and many disciples of the handyman court saw him. At the same time, Abbot Huiwen and the court heads were walking towards the handyman court uneasily. Are you sure that he returned to the handyman court? Abbot Huiwen looked at a little novice monk who was leading the way and asked solemnly, Abbot, I have seen martial uncle Zhen Guan many times, I will not be mistaken. The little novice monk who led the way patted his chest and promised. Although he did not know why the abbot was looking for Su Qin, but looking at their faces, it should not be to punish Su Qin. All the little novice monks led the way boldly. The face of the warrior monastery head next to him suddenly changed. They didn't know how many times they had addressed Su Qin as senior, but in the end, this young novice monk who had just entered the temple called Su Qin as martial uncle. Did this not mean that they were inferior to the little novice monk? In the future, you are not allowed to call that person martial uncle. The warrior monastery head glared at the little novice monk, almost scaring him to tears. A group of people entered the handyman court and stood carefully outside Su Qin's room. You can leave first. The warrior monastery head looked at the little novice monk who led the way and waved his hand. The little novice monk ran out, feeling wronged. After the little novice monk left, the surroundings suddenly fell into silence. Abbot Huiwen and the court heads looked at each other nervously, not knowing whether to speak or not. The door in front of them was as fragile as a thin piece of paper to any of them. But at this moment, the door seemed to have turned into a natural moat. High above, separating immortals and mortals. Without the permission of the existence inside, even if Abbot Huiwen and the others were given 10 times the courage, they would not dare to push the door open and enter. Just as Abbot Huiwen and the court heads were hesitating whether to speak or not, a calm and leisurely voice rang in everyone's ears, neither too fast nor too slow. Come on all of you. P.S. End of 5th update looking for monthly votes. Chapter 63. Come in all of you. The voice seemed to come from all directions and was everywhere, ringing in the ears of Abbot Huiwen and the court heads. This is... Abbot Huiwen's eyes flashed a trace of horror. Although he was sure that the voice came from the room in front of him, he could not determine where the voice came from. The other court heads were the same. They looked at each other, and finally, as if on a pilgrimage, they carefully opened the door and walked in. The decoration in the room was very ordinary. As long as a disciple of the Shaolin Temple for more than 10 years, they would have a separate residence like this. As a major martial arts sect in the world, the Shaolin Temple occupied a vast area, and there was no need to worry about the lack of land and accommodation. After Abbot Huiwen and the court heads entered the room, they could not help but raise their eyes slightly and look at Su Qin sitting cross-legged on the bed. At this moment, Su Qin's breath was restrained, as if completely integrated into the void. If Abbot Huiwen had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed that there was a person sitting in front of him. We greet the Venerable One. Abbot Huiwen and the court heads bowed slightly and whispered. The Venerable One was a respectful title given by the monks of the Shaolin Temple to those who had attained the fruit of Arhat. In Buddhism, the Venerable One had many meanings, but it mainly meant saint and great wisdom. Get up. Su Qin looked down at the respectful Abbot Huiwen and the court heads and said. As early as when he made his move outside the Great Strength Hall, Su Qin had already expected this scene, so he was naturally not surprised at this moment. After Abbot Huiwen and the court heads got up, they stood in place blankly, not knowing what to say next. If you have any questions, you can ask now. Su Qin glanced at the abbot, who had a cautious expression, sighed softly and said casually. Su Qin had a feeling that if he did not open his mouth, these people would continue to stand there. Abbot Huiwen and the other court heads looked at each other. Finally, the court head of the Arhat court braced himself and stood up. He asked cautiously, May I ask the Venerable One, 10 years ago, when my evil disciple was bewitched by the demonic thoughts, was it the Venerable One who killed him? 10 years ago, Zhenxing, the genius of the Arhat Academy, had his whole family slaughtered by evil warriors. Because of this, The devil spirit took advantage of the situation and transformed into the successor of the devil Buddha. He wanted to destroy the Shaolin temple. At that time, the descendant of the devil Buddha was scared away by a falling leaf, and his corpse was eventually found outside the Shaolin temple. Although Abbot Huiwen and the heads of the various academies speculated that a holy monk was the culprit, this matter had never been confirmed. "It's me," Su Qin said softly. Zhenxing was bewitched by the devil Buddha. His mind had long been distorted and could not be reversed. To some extent, Zhenxing was no longer himself at that time. He had become an incarnation of the devil Buddha's demonic thoughts. Su Qin had no choice but to kill him. "Many thanks to the Venerable One for punishing my evil disciple." The court head of the Arhat court had a dim light in his eyes as he retreated. After the court head of the Arhat court spoke, the other court heads and Abbot Huiwen also gathered their courage and asked the doubts in their hearts. For example, why did Shi Shui die outside the demon-subduing tower for no reason, and the changes in the seal of the back mountain, and so on. Su Qin did not deny it and answered them one by one. Now that he had entered the realm of Arhat, at least on this continent, he was invincible. As long as it did not involve secrets, he did not bother to lie about other questions. Half an hour later, Su Qin looked at Abbot Huiwen and the court heads and said faintly, "If there's nothing else, you can go back." In this half an hour, this group of old guys were like curious babies asking questions. If it were not for the 20 years of vegetarian meals, Su Qin would have already asked them to leave. Abbot Huiwen and the court heads heard this and did not dare to disobey the Venerable One's order. They immediately bowed and took their leave. Su Qin had indeed solved many of their doubts. In addition to some problems, there were more difficult problems in martial arts cultivation. Whether it was Abbot Huiwen or the court heads, they all learned a lot from this half an hour of communication. Especially the court heads, each of them was deep in thought. They were afraid that after going back for a period of seclusion, they would advance further and enter the realm of rank 2. Dharma Court. After Abbot Huiwen and the court heads left the Chores Court, they came here together. That Venerable One really knows everything. There's nothing he doesn't know. The court head of the Dharma Court was full of emotion. He looked at the Chores Court with deep awe. Just now, the court heads and Abbot Huiwen asked questions one after another. The scope of their questions included internal strength, external strength, body refining, spirit accumulation, supreme arts, and so on. There was nothing that they did not ask. But Su Qin answered them one by one. Not only did he answer, but he also explained the profound in simple terms. It was difficult for ordinary people to understand the truth of the great Tao in a few words. This was simply unbelievable. One must know that even martial artists have limited energy. Looking at the thousands of years of inheritance of the Shaolin Temple, except for the Patriarch Bodhidharma, who learned many supreme arts, even the other venerables who attained the fruit of Arhat were only good at one aspect. He was far from being able to know everything like the back of his hand like Su Qin. The other court heads heard this and nodded secretly. Indeed, they also had the same idea at the moment. Maybe that Venerable One is not a mortal like us? At this moment, Abbot Huiwen's eyes flashed and suddenly said, "Do you remember what happened in the Hall of Great Strength 20 years ago?" As soon as Abbot Huiwen said this, all the court heads were shocked. 20 years ago, there was a golden Buddha phenomenon outside the Hall of Great Strength. They all thought that it was the Buddha showing his divinity. I remember that Venerable One also entered the Shaolin Temple 20 years ago. Abbot Huiwen paused as if to control his emotions. Maybe that Venerable One is the reincarnation of a Buddha. So when he came to the Shaolin Temple, he attracted the attention of the Buddha and showed his divinity. Buddha, the reincarnation of a Buddha? The other court heads were shocked. One must know that the reincarnation of a Buddha and the Venerable Arhat were not the same thing. The Venerable Arhat was above all living beings, but after all, he only existed in the human world. But the Buddha was an existence that transcended this world. However, the court heads thought about it and felt that Abbot Huiwen's statement was very likely to be true, because Su Qin had only been in the Shaolin Temple for 20 years. In 20 years, from an ordinary person who was not even a ninth grade, to the venerable arhat who dominated the world, no one would believe that he was not the reincarnation of a Buddha. Well, this is the top secret of the Shaolin Temple. It's enough for us to know. Don't spread it. Abbot Huiwen glanced at the court heads and said, Senior brother, don't worry. I know the importance of this matter. The court heads calmed down and said in unison. At the same time, Su Qin was sitting cross-legged, familiarizing himself with his power. Late at night, the full moon hung high in the sky. Su Qin's figure flashed and appeared outside the Sutra Pavilion. You can sign in now. Su Qin looked at the Sutra Pavilion. Although he had entered the realm of Arhat, he would not give up the daily sign-in opportunity. System, sign in for me. Su Qin said in his heart. Chapter 64. Nine Yang Divine Art? Su Qin was overjoyed. Nine Yang Divine Art was one of the top divine arts of the Shaolin Temple. When cultivated to the extreme, it was said that one's body was like the sun, burning mountains and boiling seas. Unfortunately, the Nine Yang Divine skill had been lost hundreds of years ago, just like the Buddha's palm, which was the most powerful divine skill. However, the loss of Nine Yang Divine Art was different from that of Buddha's palm. Buddha's palm was completely lost. With the death of the last Buddha of the Shaolin Temple, Arhat, there was no trace of Buddha's palm in the world except in the forbidden area at the back of the mountain. However, Nine Yang Divine Art was spread from the Shaolin Temple to the martial arts world of the world. It was said that Jinren Zhang of Wudong Mountain's Zhenwu lineage had achieved what he had today because he obtained a fragment of Nine Yang Divine Art when he was young. He used it to transform Yang into Yin and created Tai Chi, which shocked the world. Not bad, not bad. Su Qin roughly felt the subtlety of Nine Yang Divine Art in his mind and nodded slightly. With Su Qin's current level, he could naturally see that Nine Yang Divine Art was a peerless divine art that went straight to Arhat's level. Although it was still far inferior to Buddha's palm, it was not much different from the fundamental divine arts of the Devil Buddha. In the following days, Su Qin returned to his usual life. The only difference was that Su Qin no longer had to sweep the floor every day. Ever since Su Qin's strength was exposed, Abbot Huiwen and the other court heads wanted to worship him as if he was their ancestor. How could they continue to let Su Qin sweep the floor? Su Qin had no objection to this. Now that he had just entered the realm of Arhat, he needed a lot of time to familiarize himself with his skyrocketing power and stabilize his realm. As for signing in, every night when there was no one around, Su Qin would naturally sign in. The sign-in system was Su Qin's biggest secret. Su Qin would never let anyone know about it. Time passed slowly. The news of the Devil Lord's death and the destruction of the demon sect spread like a hurricane throughout the empire of Tang and the world. After the Devil Lord was born, he didn't ascend Xiaoshi Mountain immediately. Instead, he first swept through the orthodox sects in the Tang dynasty. During this period, the Demon Lord's peak grade 1 Great Grandmaster strength has long been known to the world. Some martial arts legends even believe that the Demon Lord is not an ordinary peak grade 1, but a peak grade 1 Great Grandmaster who has transformed at least twice. However, no one had expected that the Devil Lord, who wanted to conquer the world, would fall in the Shaolin Temple. In the Tang dynasty, the Imperial Palace. In a certain cold and strict palace, a doddering old man in a dragon robe was looking at the information in his hand. A martial arts legend? A martial arts legend walked out of the Shaolin Temple and killed the Devil Lord? The old man in the dragon robe was naturally the Emperor of Tang. At this moment, he was frowning slightly as if he couldn't figure out what was going on. Eunuch Xiao. The Emperor of Tang put down the information in his hand and said softly, Your Majesty. A eunuch wearing a purple official uniform appeared silently beside the Emperor of Tang and bowed. Tell me, is this news true or false? The Emperor of Tang looked at Eunuch Xiao and said in a deep voice. Although the information said that before the Demon Lord died, he roared, You are a martial arts legend. But as for what the situation was at that time, relying only on this information, the Emperor of Tang could not determine. After all, this was not a cat or a dog, but a martial arts legend who overlooks all living beings in the world. Reporting back to your majesty, this old servant does not know about this matter. Eunuch Zhao, who was wearing a purple robe, bowed slightly and said with a humble expression, "It's a pity." The Emperor of Tang sighed softly, "I don't have much time left. In fact, if it weren't for Eunuch Zhao sacrificing part of his cultivation to forcibly prolong his life, the Emperor of Tang should have died of old age years ago. But even so, the Emperor of Tang could not hold on for more than a few years. How has Xianxia been learning recently? Can he take charge of the overall situation?" The Emperor of Tang rubbed the space between his eyebrows and asked slowly. "His Highness Xianxia is learning very quickly and has not let your majesty down," Eunuch Zhao replied. "That's good. I have fulfilled my promise to his mother." The Emperor of Tang's voice became lower and lower. Eunuch Zhao lowered his head and did not speak. "Your Majesty, there is something this old servant doesn't know if I should say it or not." Eunuch Zhao hesitated for a moment and said, "What is it?" The Emperor of Tang frowned. Before His Highness Xianxia came back, he had already married a woman and claimed that he would never marry her again in this life. Eunuch Zhao said, "This matter almost made the Grand Tutors who taught Li Xing jump in anger. It must be known that the Empire of Tang attaches great importance to the continuation of the family line. As a descendant of the imperial family, if he doesn't have 3 wives and 4 concubines, it would be a joke." "Oh!" A smile appeared on the Emperor of Tang's face. "This kid is like me when I was young." When the Emperor of Tang said this, he thought for a while and said indifferently, "Since he doesn't want to marry her, let him be. I have been well behaved all my life. How can I make him afraid?" "As you wish." When Eunuch Zhao heard this, he slowly retreated into the dark. Meng Yuan Empire. The endless grassland. A tall man gazed at the vast sky with deep eyes. If there was a grade 1 great grandmaster in the Central Plains, he would be horrified to recognize that this tall man was the supreme imperial teacher of the Meng Yuan Empire. He supported the entire Meng Yuan Empire with his own strength and was eyeing the Central Plains covetously. Even the emperor of the Meng Yuan Empire had to bow when he saw the imperial teacher. In the eyes of the people of the Meng Yuan Empire, the status of the imperial teacher is comparable to that of a god. At this moment, a figure came in and bowed to present a letter. "Imperial teacher. This is the information sent back by the Empire of Tang," the figure said respectfully. The tall man picked up the paper and glanced at it. After a long time, the letter was reduced to dust without a sound. The tall man sighed softly and murmured, "How God favors the Central Plains." The figure standing respectfully next to him couldn't help but say, "With the imperial teacher, we can definitely conquer the heavens." Shaolin Temple. Su Qin was sitting cross-legged in the back mountain forbidden area. "After entering the realm of Arhat, the progress of my strength has slowed down a lot." Su Qin opened his eyes, slightly disappointed. Before becoming Arhat, Su Qin could feel the improvement of his strength almost every day. Except for the last few years when he needed to transform his body, divine sense, and internal strength, the rest of the time he almost crossed a realm every few years. But now, Su Qin felt the difficulty of martial Dao cultivation. "It should be because my strength is too strong now. Ordinary progress can't be noticed at all." Su Qin thought silently in his heart. For example, if you have 10 copper coins and suddenly have an increase of 1 copper coin, you will definitely notice it immediately. But if you have 100 copper coins, 1,000 copper coins, or 10,000 copper coins and suddenly have an increase of 1 copper coin, you will probably not even look at it. Su Qin was facing this dilemma at the moment. He was too strong. After attaining the realm of Arhat, Su Qin not only controlled his own strength, but also the strength of heaven and earth. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.